A message from God. Discover hope, love, and miracles in your life. Have you ever felt lost in the chaos of life, yearning for direction, peace, or even just a glimmer of hope? Amid the noise and uncertainty, a message from God quietly reaches out, whispering, "I love you. Don't be afraid. Trust me." It is a call not only to endure but to rise, a promise that you are never alone and that every trial holds a deeper purpose. This story begins with a profound conflict, the tension between human fragility and divine love. Why do we face challenges that seem insurmountable? How can we reconcile our pain with the idea of a loving Creator? In this narrative, God reveals the answers through His enduring presence, the transformative power of forgiveness, and the unshakable hope found in faith. Imagine your life as a canvas, each stroke shaped by joy and sorrow, doubt and triumph. God's hand, steady and compassionate, paints a masterpiece even through the darkest hues. Will you allow His message to illuminate the hidden beauty in your struggles? Join us as we uncover the life-changing truths of God's love and promises. Through trials, redemption, and renewal, this journey invites you to find strength, courage, and hope like never before. Stay with us. This is a story that could change your life. Have you ever felt the weight of the world pressing down on you, as if each step forward only leads to another wall? In these moments of despair, a message from God emerges, not as thunder or lightning, but as a gentle whisper. "I love you. Don't be afraid. Trust me." These words are not just a reassurance. They are an invitation, a call to embrace hope, trust, and the extraordinary love of a Creator who never abandons His creation. Let us begin where all great journeys do, with a promise. The story opens with God's voice, reminding each of us that we are seen, known, and deeply loved. Imagine a child standing in a storm, frightened by the thunder and blinded by the rain. The child feels alone until a strong, familiar hand takes hold, guiding them to safety. This is the essence of God's promise. No matter how fierce the storm, His hand is always there, steady and unwavering. Have you felt this guiding presence in your life, even in your darkest moments? Consider the story of Joseph from the Bible. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and unjustly imprisoned, Joseph's life seemed like a series of devastating blows. Yet, even in the depths of a foreign dungeon, God's promise remained. The message from God to Joseph was clear: "I am with you. Your pain is not meaningless. Your trials are shaping a purpose far greater than you can imagine." And in time, Joseph rose to power, saving countless lives and reconciling with those who had wronged him. This story is not just about Joseph. It is about you and me. How often do we feel like prisoners of our own circumstances, chained by fear, regret, or hopelessness? Yet, even in our most desperate moments, God whispers, "I love you. Don't be afraid. Trust me." His love transforms our pain into purpose, just as He did for Joseph. Imagine your life as a mosaic, each piece a fragment of joy, sorrow, triumph, or failure. Alone, these pieces may seem chaotic, even meaningless. But in the hands of a master artist, they come together to form a breathtaking masterpiece. This is what God does with our lives. Every tear, every struggle, every moment of weakness becomes part of a divine design that reveals His glory and our worth. But why does God allow us to face trials at all? This question resonates deeply, doesn't it? The answer lies in the nature of growth. Just as gold must endure fire to be purified, our character is refined through challenges. God does not send these trials to punish us but to prepare us. He sees the strength we cannot yet see in ourselves. Through the fire of adversity, He shapes us into vessels of honor. Do you see yourself as a vessel? A jar of clay, fragile yet holding the potential for something extraordinary? God's promise is that He will fill you with His Spirit, empowering you to overcome any obstacle. He doesn't promise an easy life, but He promises a meaningful one. And isn't that what we truly long for? A life that matters, a life that reflects His love and grace? The opening promise of this journey is simple yet profound. You are not alone. Whatever storm you face, whatever burden you carry, God is with you. His message from God is not a distant echo but a present reality. I love you, he says, and these words are a lifeline, pulling us from the depths of despair into the light of his love. Now, let me ask you, what are the storms in your life? What burdens feel too heavy to bear? Can you hear his voice, calling you to trust, to let go of fear, and to step into his promises? This is not a rhetorical question. It is an invitation. Take a moment to reflect. Close your eyes if you must. Can you feel his presence? Can you hear his whisper? This is just the beginning of the story. As we journey further, we will uncover the power of faith to overcome fear, the beauty of forgiveness to heal wounds, and the courage that arises from knowing we are unconditionally loved. The message from God is unfolding, layer by layer, revealing a truth that has the power to transform not only your life but your very soul. Stay with me, for the best is yet to come. This journey is not just a story. It is your story, and God is inviting you to step into it with hope, courage, and faith. Let us take the next step together. Have you ever stood before a mountain that seemed impossible to climb, your spirit weighed down by fear and doubt? Life often feels like an unrelenting series of challenges, each one daring us to rise or tempting us to surrender. Yet, in the midst of our struggles, a message from God speaks gently yet firmly. Don't be afraid. Trust me. These words remind us that no mountain is too high when we walk with the Creator who moves mountains. Imagine for a moment standing in the shoes of Joseph as he faced betrayal by his own brothers. Sold into slavery, stripped of his freedom, and later imprisoned unjustly, Joseph's life seemed like a series of defeats. And yet, even in the darkness of a prison cell, Joseph clung to a truth greater than his circumstances: the unwavering presence of God. Through every trial, the message from God to Joseph was clear: I am with you. This is not the end of your story. Isn't that a message we all long to hear? When life feels like it's closing in, when past mistakes haunt us, or when the future seems uncertain, God's words echo through the corridors of time. I love you. Don't be afraid. His promise is not that life will be free of difficulty, but that he will be with us every step of the way. God often allows us to face challenges not to break us, but to build us. Consider the analogy of a diamond. Under immense pressure and heat, a lump of carbon transforms into one of the most precious substances on Earth. Similarly, our trials are not punishments but opportunities for growth, refinement, and transformation. Each difficulty we face is shaping us, preparing us for a greater purpose. But how do we face these trials? The answer lies in faith. Faith is not the absence of fear but the courage to trust God in the midst of it. Remember Peter stepping out of the boat to walk on water toward Jesus? As long as his focus remained on Christ, he defied the impossible. But the moment he allowed fear to cloud his vision, he began to sink. How often do we find ourselves sinking, not because the storm is too great, but because we've forgotten the one who calms the storm? God's voice calls out to us in these moments. Don't be afraid. Trust me. It is an invitation to look beyond the waves and fix our eyes on him. When we do, we discover that his strength is greater than our weakness and his presence is enough to sustain us through any trial. Another profound truth in God's message is the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks the chains of the past, setting us free to walk boldly into the future. Joseph's story illustrates this beautifully. When he stood face to face with the brothers who had betrayed him, he had every reason to seek vengeance. Instead, Joseph chose forgiveness, saying, "What you intended for harm, God intended for good." Forgiveness is not about excusing wrongs. It is about releasing the burden of bitterness and trusting God to bring justice and restoration. When we forgive, we reflect the heart of God, who forgives us despite our flaws. Have you ever felt the weight of resentment or the sting of betrayal? What might change if you chose to forgive not for their sake but for yours? Through forgiveness, we also experience the liberating power of grace. God's message to us is that his grace is sufficient, no matter our failures or shortcomings. Like the prodigal son who returned home expecting rejection but was met with open arms, we too are welcomed into God's love without hesitation. I love you, he says, and I forgive you. Let me ask you, what are the mountains in your life? Are they made of fear, regret, or the weight of unforgiven hurts? Can you hear God's voice calling you to let go, to trust, and to forgive? His promise is that when you release these burdens, you will find freedom, peace, and strength to face whatever lies ahead. Picture a seed buried in the soil. In darkness, it may seem forgotten, yet it is in this hidden place that growth begins. The soil's pressure, the sun's warmth, and the rain's persistence combine to bring forth life. Your trials are like that soil, and God's message is the life-giving water that nourishes your soul. Are you willing to trust the process, knowing that what feels like a burial may actually be the beginning of something beautiful? The journey through challenges and forgiveness is not an easy one, but it is a path that leads to freedom, growth, and a deeper connection with God. His message from God is clear. Your trials have a purpose. Your pain is not wasted. Trust me, for I am with you. As we continue this journey, we will explore how God's promises ignite hope, build unshakable courage, and light the way forward. Stay with me, for the best chapters of this story are yet to come. Together, let us climb the mountains, break the chains, and walk boldly in faith. Have you ever looked up at the night sky, captivated by the brilliance of the stars? It's in the deepest darkness that their light shines the brightest. This is the essence of hope, a radiant force that emerges not in the absence of difficulty but in its very midst. A message from God calls to us in these moments, whispering, "Don't be afraid. I love you. Trust me." Hope, rooted in his promises, becomes the anchor that steadies our souls and the light that guides our steps. Hope is not merely an emotion. It is a divine spark planted in our hearts, much like a seed sown in fertile soil. Imagine the seed, buried in darkness, surrounded by the weight of the earth. Though unseen, it carries within it the potential for life. God's message reminds us that our dreams, no matter how dormant or forgotten, hold the power to flourish if we trust in his timing and care. Are you nurturing the seeds of hope in your heart? Or have you allowed fear and doubt to choke them? Consider the story of the Israelites as they stood before the Red Sea, an impassable barrier ahead and Pharaoh's army closing in behind. Fear gripped them, and they cried out, "Why have you brought us here to die?" Yet, even then, God's voice rang clear. "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance of the Lord." With a mighty hand, God parted the waters, turning an impossible situation into a miraculous path to freedom. What Red Sea are you standing before today? Do you trust that the God who made a way for the Israelites can do the same for you? Faith is the key to unlocking this hope. It is the unshakable trust that God's promises are true, even when circumstances seem to say otherwise. Picture a lighthouse standing firm against a raging storm. The waves crash, the winds howl, but the lighthouse remains unmoved, its light piercing through the darkness. This is the faith God calls us to, a faith that is not swayed by the storms of life but rooted in his unchanging word. But how do we cultivate such faith? The answer lies in remembering. When doubt clouds our vision, we are called to recall the moments when God's hand was unmistakably present in our lives. Like David, who faced Goliath with confidence because he remembered how God had delivered him from the lion and the bear, we find courage in reflecting on God's past faithfulness. What battles has God already fought and won for you? Do you trust that the same God who was with you then is with you now? Courage is the fruit of this steadfast faith. It is not the absence of fear but the determination to act in spite of it. God's message encourages us to step out boldly, just as Peter did when he walked on water. Though the waves surrounded him, his eyes were fixed on Jesus, and his steps defied the impossible. What steps of faith is God calling you to take? Can you hear him urging you to trust, even when the path ahead seems uncertain? Hope and courage are deeply intertwined, and together, they light the way forward. Imagine a torchbearer running through a dark forest, each step illuminated by the flame in their hand. Though the destination remains unseen, the light is enough to guide the journey. God's message from God is this torch, a constant reminder that we are never alone, that His promises will never fail, and that His presence will never leave us. Yet, hope and courage are not meant to be kept to ourselves. They are gifts to be shared, much like the light of a torch passed from one runner to the next in a relay. As we walk in faith, our lives become testimonies that inspire others to believe. Think of Joseph, who not only overcame his own trials but became a source of salvation for an entire nation. Your story, too, holds the power to inspire and uplift those around you. Are you willing to let your light shine, to share the hope you found in God's promises? Let us also remember that hope is sustained through the power of God's love. His message reassures us time and again, "I love you." It is a love that does not waver in our weakness, does not fade in our failures, and does not retreat in our doubt. Like a shepherd who leaves the 99 to search for the one lost sheep, God's love is relentless, pursuing us with grace and compassion. Can you feel the weight of that love in your life? Do you trust that it is strong enough to carry you through any trial? As we reflect on this part of the journey, let me ask you, what dreams have you buried, believing them too far gone to revive? What fears have kept you from stepping into the life God has prepared for you? His message is clear. Do not fear. Trust in me. I am with you, and I will see you through. In the next part of this journey, we will dive deeper into the power of God's unconditional love, His unending forgiveness, and the grace that transforms our lives. Together, let us hold fast to the hope He offers, nurture the faith He has planted, and walk courageously into the future He has promised. The light of His message from God continues to guide us, and the best is yet to come. What is the most powerful force in the universe? Is it the strength of a hurricane, the vastness of the stars, or the depths of the ocean? No, the most powerful force is God's love. A love so profound, so unconditional, that it transforms everything it touches. Through His message from God, we hear it again and again. I love you. Don't be afraid. Trust me. This love is not fleeting or conditional. It is a foundation, a refuge, and the source of grace that redeems and restores. Imagine a parent watching their child fall while learning to walk. The parent doesn't scold or abandon them. Instead, they reach down, lift the child, and encourage them to try again. This is God's love for us. A love that does not condemn us for our stumbles but celebrates every step we take toward Him. Have you ever felt like you've fallen too far, made too many mistakes to be loved? God's message to you is clear. I love you, no matter where you've been or what you've done. Let us reflect on the story of the prodigal son. A young man, consumed by pride and greed, demanded his inheritance and squandered it in reckless living. When his wealth was gone, and he found himself destitute, he decided to return home, expecting rejection or condemnation. Instead, his father ran to meet him, embracing him with tears of joy and declaring a celebration. This parable is not just a story. It is a portrait of God's heart. No matter how far we stray, His love is relentless, waiting to welcome us back. Can you imagine the warmth of that embrace, the relief of being truly forgiven? Forgiveness is one of the most radical expressions of God's love. It breaks the chains of guilt and shame, setting us free to live fully and abundantly. Yet, forgiveness is not always easy for us to accept or extend to others. We often hold onto grudges, believing that justice requires it. But God's message reminds us that His justice is wrapped in mercy, and His forgiveness knows no bounds. Consider Jesus on the cross, looking at those who mocked and crucified Him, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." If He can forgive in such unimaginable circumstances, what might happen if we allowed that same forgiveness to flow through us? Forgiveness is not only a gift we receive but a gift we give. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents a grudge, a wound, or a regret. The weight slows you down, drains your energy, and keeps you from moving forward. Forgiveness is the act of setting down that backpack, releasing the weight that binds you. What stones are you carrying today? Can you hear God's voice urging you to let them go, to forgive as you have been forgiven? God's love is also a fortress, a place of safety and protection. Life often feels like a battlefield, with arrows of doubt, fear, and pain flying toward us. Yet His love is our shield, our refuge in times of trouble. Psalm 91 reminds us, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." Picture yourself stepping into this fortress, the chaos of the world silenced by the strength of His embrace. Do you trust that His love is enough to protect you, no matter what comes your way? Grace is the ultimate expression of God's unconditional love. It is unearned, undeserved, and yet freely given. Like rain falling on a dry and barren land, grace brings life where there was once despair. Through grace, we are not only forgiven but transformed, empowered to live as new creations. Paul's words in 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9 echo this truth. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." What areas of your life need the healing touch of God's grace? Are you willing to open your heart and receive it? Imagine your life as a potter's clay, imperfect and unfinished. In the hands of the master potter, every crack and flaw becomes an opportunity for beauty. God's love, forgiveness, and grace are the tools He uses to shape us into vessels of honor, capable of reflecting His light to the world. Have you allowed Him to shape you, or are you resisting His touch, believing you are too broken to be made whole? Let me ask you, what does God's love mean to you? Have you experienced the freedom of forgiveness, the peace of His protection, and the joy of His grace? His message from God is not just words. It is an invitation to step into a life transformed by His love. "Trust me," He says, "I have called you by name, and you are mine." As we move toward the conclusion of this journey, we will explore how God's love compels us to live in gratitude and faith, trusting in His promises and walking boldly into the future He has prepared. Together, let us embrace the fullness of His unconditional love and allow it to shape every aspect of our lives. The story is not over yet. The best is still to come. As our journey through this message from God comes to its final chapter, the question lingers, what will you do with this truth? God's voice has spoken, not in thunder but in a gentle, unwavering whisper. "I love you. Don't be afraid. Trust me." This is not just a story of comfort. It is a call to action. It is an invitation to live boldly, filled with gratitude and faith, trusting in the miraculous power of God's love and promises. Gratitude is where transformation begins. Imagine waking up each morning and seeing your life as a gift, every breath, every sunrise, every moment of joy a reflection of God's grace. Gratitude shifts our focus from what we lack to what we have. It allows us to see the fingerprints of God in our daily lives, even amidst struggles. Have you taken time to thank Him for the blessings you've already received? What miracles might unfold if you approached life with a heart overflowing with gratitude? The Apostle Paul encourages us to give thanks in all circumstances, not because every situation is good, but because every situation is an opportunity for God to work. Think of the loaves and fishes. What seemed insufficient in human hands became more than enough when lifted in thanksgiving to God. What areas of your life feel like not enough? Can you trust that when you offer them to God with gratitude, He can multiply them beyond measure? Faith in miracles flows naturally from a heart of gratitude. Throughout the Bible, miracles are not just acts of divine power. They are manifestations of God's love and faithfulness. From the parting of the Red Sea to the resurrection of Lazarus, miracles remind us that nothing is impossible for God. But miracles often require a step of faith, a willingness to trust in what we cannot see. What step of faith is God calling you to take today? Can you hear Him saying, "Trust me. With me, all things are possible"? Consider Peter when he stepped out of the boat to walk on water. The miracle didn't happen while he stayed in the safety of the boat. It happened when he dared to trust Jesus, even in the midst of the storm. Are you willing to leave the comfort of your boat and step into the unknown, trusting that God's hand will sustain you? Living in faith also means living with purpose. God's message from God is not just a reminder of His love. It is a call to partner with him in transforming the world. Like Joseph, whose faith turned his trials into a source of salvation for many, we are called to use our gifts, our stories, and our lives to reflect God's glory. What unique purpose has God placed on your heart? Are you ready to say yes to his call, even if the path is uncertain? This journey of faith, gratitude, and action ultimately leads to a life filled with miracles. Not just the extraordinary kind, but the quiet, everyday miracles of peace, joy, and hope. Imagine your life as a candle. In a dark room, one small flame can light the way for many. When we live in faith, our lives become that light, drawing others toward the love and promises of God. Who in your life needs to see that light today? Will you let your faith shine, even in the darkest moments? As we conclude, let us return to the heart of God's message. I love you. Don't be afraid. Trust me. These words are not just a promise. They are a foundation upon which to build a life of purpose, courage, and joy. They are a call to let go of fear, embrace gratitude, and step boldly into the miraculous life God has prepared for you. Let me ask you, what will your next step be? Will you choose to trust in his love, to live with gratitude, and to walk in faith? Will you let his message from God transform not only your heart but your actions, your relationships, and your future? This is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning. As you move forward, carry this truth with you. God's love is constant. His promises are unshakable, and his miracles are waiting to unfold in your life. You are his beloved child, called by name, and he will never leave you. Thank you for walking this path with me. If this journey has inspired you, I invite you to take the next step by subscribing to our channel, God's Chosen Path. Let us continue to explore the beauty of faith, the depth of God's love, and the incredible miracles that happen when we trust him completely. Share your thoughts in the comments. How has this message from God spoken to your heart? Together, let us walk boldly into the life he has called us to live, knowing that the best is yet to come. May your heart be filled with peace, your steps guided by faith, and your life illuminated by his love. Until we meet again, may you always remember, I love you. Don't be afraid. Trust me. As we reach the conclusion of this story, one truth resonates deeply. God's love is unchanging, his promises unshakable, and his presence unwavering. The message from God has guided us through trials, inspired faith, and revealed the transformative power of forgiveness, hope, and grace. It is a call not just to believe but to live boldly, trusting in the miraculous work he is doing in and through us. The heart of this journey lies in these simple yet profound words. I love you. Don't be afraid. Trust me. This is not just a message for a moment. It is a foundation for life. God sees you, knows you, and loves you beyond measure. He calls you to rise above fear, to embrace hope, and to walk confidently in the light of his promises. Think about your own story. What challenges have shaped you? What blessings remind you of his faithfulness? Share your reflections in the comments. We would love to hear how this message is speaking to your heart. As you leave today, ask yourself, what will I do with this truth? How can I share the light of God's love with others? The journey doesn't end here. It continues in every act of faith, every step of courage, and every moment of gratitude. If this story has inspired you, we invite you to subscribe to our channel, God's Chosen Path, where we continue exploring the beauty of faith, the depth of God's promises, and the power of living a life led by his love. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll never miss a chance to grow and be inspired. Let us walk forward together, carrying the message from God in our hearts and sharing his light with the world. Remember, I love you. Don't be afraid. Trust me. The best is yet to come, and you are never alone on this path. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, may God's love surround you, his peace guide you, and his blessings overflow in your life. Stay inspired, stay faithful, and we'll see you in the next video.